Hello and welcome to another episode of Dynamic Divas, where we share incredible stories of women making waves in the field of technology. I'm Rachit, your host for the show. Today, I'm very excited and honored to have Brittany as a guest at Dynamic Divas. Brittany is based out of Florida. She's working as a solution architect for Dynamics 365 applications at Caf2Code. Hi, Brittany. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining. So, just a quick introduction from my side, and then I will hand it over to you. So, Brittany, you did your master's in accounting from University of Tampa, and then you started your career in accounting. Then you implemented AX 2012, and you decided to switch to IT, and you became a consultant, and then you grew in the role of solution architect. You are up for two Digital Revolution Awards, and you have also been awarded your first Microsoft Most Valuable Professional recognition in the year 2024. So, congratulations for getting recognized as MVP.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you have a 8-year-old who keeps you on your toes. So, congratulations. I hope you get time to do community contributions and also take care of him. But you're doing a great job, and we all are following your blogs and the content which you share. It helps a lot, Brittany.
Thank you.
Cool. So I'll hand it over to you if you can summarize your career journey and your key achievements and how you transitioned from an accounting background to an IT consultant and then all the way up to solution architect role. That will really help us to understand.
Yeah, so I started in accounting I was still in grad school doing accounts receivable. I really enjoyed it. I liked it. It was problem solving. I considered it Sudoku on steroids. And then once I became a team lead, we decided to implement AX 2012 off of a homegrown legacy system. So that was obviously an experience, not having been through any sort of implementation. I had just, mastered the homegrown system. I got thrown into this world of implementations. Had no idea what a solutions architect was. I had a fantastic solutions architect we worked with, and I was like, "What do you do exactly?" And he couldn't explain it. I know I also can no longer explain it myself, even though I am one. So I understand his struggle. But we went through the implementation. I stayed in accounting. I owned a lot of the business processes that were implemented for accounts receivable. I wrote the user guides. I wrote, training books. I did the training for my team. And I just really grew to love that consistent and, iterative process of making improvements, going through the cycle testing and deploying. There came a point where IT came over to me and said, "Hey, you seem to know what you're doing. You speak business language. We're not so good at speaking the business language. What do you think about coming and joining our team?" And I laughed it off. I was like, "Yeah, that's nice, but what do I know?" They came to me again, and I was like, "You know what? Let me give this a try." I talked it over with my husband. My son was 2 at the time, and that was a big career jump. That was abandoning what I had gone to school for however
True.
many years, all of the student loans and you know, all of the money and investment that went into my degree. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be abandoning this. Do I really want to do this? So it's like, you know what? I'll give it a try. Accounting will take me back when I fail, but I never did. I was able to kind of jump in head first and just learn on my feet. There was no formal training. They said, "Hey, write a functional design document," and I'm like, "Cool, what's that?" And they handed me a piece of paper that somebody had done 3 years prior and said, "Just make it look like this." So
Yeah,
I did
it's a
that.
template which keeps floating us.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, okay, I can do this. So, I started doing it, and the first developers I worked with, and one of my absolute favorite developers I've ever worked with, we're still close friends. He kindly told me it was the worst FDD he'd ever seen in his life. But he coached me through, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to look at what tables should be on there, and how things should interact, and what things should be labeled, and how it should feel. So I was able to kind of use that to grow in that role. I was thrown into security projects. I had to do an entire security redesign for that company with no idea of how roles, duties, and privileges worked. It was fun. I then, met some great consultants that really showed me the ropes. Um, and then I just kind of outgrew that position and decided it was time to take a chance on myself and a chance on my career in tech. And jump ship from a company I had been with for, 5+ years to see what I could do. I made that jump in 2019, which we all know is right before COVID hit. So I jumped into a position where it was great for 6 months until it wasn't, because everybody was staying at home and I was primarily traveling. So I was doing just contract work. So I ended up kind of getting sidelined because nobody was really traveling for consulting. All the companies were pulling their money out of it and just letting their systems be as they were. So I was home for quite a bit of time, and it did make me question if I made the right decision jumping into tech. But I just kept at it. I kept applying, and then finally found the company that I'm at now, who, really saw potential in me, saw that, I had the drive and determination to, build solutions and work with customers and clients and really just give it a go. So I started there as a contractor, which was supposed to be a 3-month contract, and it's almost 4 years later, and I'm still there. So, I started as a techno-functional consultant. I know enough code to be dangerous. I take that, that AP computer science class in high school, and I really owned that skills section. And I just started working with, different developers, different other functional consultants, and they saw that I did have the potential to be a solutions architect. And when they decided to kind of launch the company from just being contractors to having actual employees, I was offered one of those positions as a solutions architect. And I owe a lot of, what has happened over the last 4 years to that company, to Caf2Code, because without them, I don't know where I would have ended up. I might be traveling all the time and not really home. So it was nice to have someone take a chance on me when on paper I had 6 months of consulting experience and 8 months of being at home searching for jobs because COVID, unfortunately, kind of stepped in right as I started my consulting journey.
That sounds roller coaster ride. Like you made a decision to let go of your accounting background, got into IT, and then COVID hit, and then finding a new opportunity. But I think you stayed committed towards finding the opportunity in this field, and with the right support of people around you, and Caf2Code taking giving you that platform, and then now you are with them for 4 years. I think that relationship would have grown much stronger now. So that sounds a lot of emotional ups and downs as well, which you have gone through. But I am identifying few key things where having close friends who give you open feedback, like you mentioned, the developer with whom you were working gave you a feedback on how to write FDD. Maybe like what you have written is from a business perspective, but how will it help the technical team to deliver the solution you want? So having people who can give you open feedback to help you improve adds a lot of value. And then art of writing FDD, which you mentioned, like it takes time for people to get and realize the value of FDD. Like when I go into projects, a lot of time FDDs are only meant to be used by developers to do development. But then my view is like FDD goes long way. It helps you in testing. It helps you in keeping your processes intact. It helps you in training as well. So FDD is basically one-stop reference document for your entire business process. It covers so many things. So yeah, congratulations on succeeding with all the challenges. And today here you are, an MVP and making waves in the world. People are following your blogs. Tell us something about your blog as well. Like it's quite famous. We follow it a lot, and it's very helpful. Like when people come to me and ask for some good reference materials, I always refer your blog to them and say, hey, go read this blog. It definitely helps you to kickstart the learning in dynamics space. So can you tell us something about your interest in blogging?
Yeah, so I found that I love teaching and teaching kind of even the basic stuff. Sometimes going back to the basics is the most fun, functionality to talk about. Even something as simple as, adding columns to a form and saving the view and being able to save that. So many people I've run into have been using Dynamics for years and they didn't know they could do that. So I kind of took it from that perspective of what can I teach people that they can use today without having really not really needing a system admin to help them with it, or needing, deep technical expertise. I'm not a technical person, I'll never pretend to be. but I just wanted it to be approachable. I kind of took a page from, I had an accounting professor in grad school, and he asked us to rewrite tax code like we were explaining it to our dogs. He then told me it was too simple. I said, well, I have a really dumb dog. But it kind of resonated with me because I'm like, I can't write this as somebody who knows how to use the software. I need to write it as somebody who's learning it, as somebody who may not be familiar with it, because if you make it too complex or require foundational knowledge, it's just not as approachable by everybody. You know, somebody may look at it and go, oh, I know that information. Oh, but this is a nice little tidbit. I didn't know this piece. But I want everybody, regardless of skill level, to be able to look at it and understand, you know, what I'm talking about. And for my dog, if she could log onto a computer, to also be able to use, you know, that instructions. And sometimes I'll run it by, you know, friends and colleagues who have no idea what dynamics even is, and I'm like, does this make sense? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess if I can click into the system, but the wording made sense. And I think that's a huge part, as somebody who was thrown into AX 2012 with not a bunch of training other than my core job function. I had to learn a lot of it through Googling and just on the fly. And that was a challenge because there was not a lot out there that taught me without having a lot of context. So that's the kind of approach I wanted to take.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned is so correct, because I also like, there are so many personalization capabilities in the system which can improve your productivity. And I also meet people who have been using it for years, but probably they don't know that you can go to options and view details and see all the values of a table, like by going to show all fields. So there are all these little small nuggets which you have shared on your blogs, which help people to stay more productive, and it can save their time by just knowing, okay, I can right click, personalize, save it as a view, and get my own personal view out of it. Just before we move forward, I think I also want to highlight that your accounting background is not something you have like moved out of with. Like, it still helps you, right? Because you have accounting background, you worked in business, and with that knowledge, you were able to understand the processes in AX 2012, and then you were able to relate it back, like how do I consolidate my accounts, or how do I define my chart of accounts. You had all that knowledge, you had all that business experience, and then getting into product would have become more easy because you know what you're doing. And that's what you mentioned, like IT came and said, you know the business, you know what you're doing, can you help us? Because a lot of people who are into IT, they don't have experience of getting involved with the business and get used to the day-to-day terminology. So how does your accounting background helps you even today?
Oh gosh, I probably use it now more than when I was in accounting. You know, I'm constantly looking at general ledger transactions, voucher transactions, and helping, you know, various businesses to understand, you know, maybe why something posted a certain way. I love talking about posting profiles. I've heard a lot of people say, well, what are those? And I'm like, that drives everything. And they're like, what, where, how can I set this up? So I work a lot with accounting teams. I typically specialize with my clients with the accounting teams, working with CFOs, you know, controllers, just trying to make sure that their finances are running smoothly. I had one client that every month at the end of the month, they had transactions they couldn't fix, they couldn't reconcile, and I had to go through and help them. And we finally, you know, figured out how their posting profiles needed to be set up and what correcting entries we needed to make. And I'm happy to say I haven't really heard much from them in the last 2.5 years during month-end close, and that's great, because that means I did my job and I taught them how to use the system, and I got them into a place that they're confident in their financials. And that to me, at the end of the day, is one of the most rewarding aspects. And if I get to use my degree, then it's a good day.
That's so cool. So even like, as you said, posting profiles, they are so important in the system. And a lot of people who are not too deep in finance, they don't really probably understand it's hitting the GL, but it's more about hitting the right GL accounts, right? You just don't have to post anywhere and then try to figure out how did this entry get into this account. So having your posting profiles in shape is very crucial finance configuration, which should be reviewed by people who have all this great experience like yourself, solution architects, finance experts. and it is not something people should just go and change, and then their financial close tasks will give a lot of headache. So no, I think definitely what you mentioned is cool. And this feeling of customers learning from your work is actually very good. So when you teach your customers something and they adapt it and they are able to run with it for a long time, it gives you a very good feeling, because then you have actually imparted that knowledge and the business is able to run on its own. So that's very good thing to hear. And I also encourage my customers to take as much as ownership as you can. It's your system. Take ownership, drive it, and live with it.
Yeah, the worst part about
So
it is sometimes I just miss talking to them and working with them. Like I'll just send an email, be like, "Hey, we haven't worked together in a while. Just how are the kids? How are things going?" Because you build relationships with a lot of the clients. So
yes.
when you're not working with them day to day anymore, you're like, "Oh, I miss you. Like, how are things going?" And I'd like to check in once in a while, even on a personal level, just because you never know. They might have a random question that they're just like, "Oh, well, I haven't heard from you in a while," and
True.
just make myself available to them if they have questions.
Yeah, no, definitely regular check-ins helps a lot, and especially with product always continuously getting updated, and with the new service updates, you have new features, something may get deprecated, something new is coming, so you can always tell customers, okay, hey, there's a new bank reconciliation feature coming ahead, and you can give them a walkthrough. And I'm actually looking forward to the next version 10.0.40, where a lot of new modern banking capabilities are about to come out in the product. All right. So let's talk about your MVP journey. So please tell us something about what inspired you to be an MVP, and what are your some suggestions to people who are looking forward to being an MVP? How can they prepare for it?
Oh wow. I don't remember when I decided that I wanted to be an MVP, but I was like, hey, I found out what MVPs were. I was like, hey, I want to do that. How do I do that? And I was like, I don't know. But I'm gonna put it on my 5-year plan and we'll figure it out as we go. I was able to connect with a lot of people at conferences. Sometimes we think, connecting with other consultants is difficult. Because at the end of the day, some of us are competitors, right? We work for companies that are competing for the same business. So I think looking at the industry, you can kind of see it's a little cutthroat in that way. But my experience has been that there's a lot of really great people in the dynamics community, and especially some really great women that I've been able to connect with through user groups and just different conferences. One particularly that just really took an interest in me and really got me started on the right track to become an MVP was Mary Myers. She's the owner of World Max. She's an amazing advocate in the community. I had gone to her user group in Tampa when I lived there, and I really enjoyed it. I spoke a couple times for her, and it was just really always something I admired about her, that she was an MVP. And I was talking to her about it one day, and she said, "I thought you were an MVP. I keep seeing your name." And I was like, "No, I'm just speaking at conferences and on LinkedIn, like that's it. That's just me." And she's like, "Well, you should be an MVP." And I said, "Well, I don't know how to do that." And she's like, "Well, let's get you hooked up with someone who works in your space. So someone who works with F&O, and let's get you started on a journey." And she's like, "You should really start a blog. You should, do all of these things." And I was like, "Well, I don't know if I have anything that people want to hear about." And she's like, "What you talk about is great. Just do that. Just do what you're doing, just in a different format." And I said, "Okay." So I started, kind of started my blog that night. I went in, I made a logo, I started putting things together. And she got me in contact with Kelly Gustafson, who's also an MVP, also works for Caf2Code now, which is exciting to, actually be able to work day to day with her as well. It's really great.
Nice.
But they both encouraged me to just keep doing what I was doing. They're like, just keep doing what you're doing, speaking at conferences, doing Ask the Expert stations, doing, panels that are invited onto, and just keep writing, keep putting tips and tricks and things out there. And they're like, once we're about a year in, we can start doing the application process with Microsoft. They both were cheering me on the whole way of making sure I had enough content, enough things out there to make my application as strong as it could be. constantly providing feedback and just, cheering me on even when it was difficult at times to, keep putting stuff in because I'm like, "Ugh, what if I don't get it?" Obviously imposter syndrome comes in there and you're like, I'm just, Brittany who used to be an accountant and now I'm in IT. Like, oh gosh, did I make a huge mistake? Like, I'm going to put myself out there. But once I finally got the application submitted, it became a lot of imposter syndrome. It's definitely not for the weak of heart. You definitely have to really put yourself in a space, and it's difficult. And I'm sure you can relate to this. Of you want to
Yeah.
be so confident that you got it because right, you're like, I did all the work. I know myself. I know my work is good. But at the same time, you're trying to tell yourself not to get too excited because you're like, I know a lot of people don't get it the first time, and you have to just prepare yourself mentally for that. And so it's this battle for as long as it takes to hear back of, I'm great, I'm gonna get it, I'm not good enough. I'm great, I'm gonna get it, I'm not good enough. And I just had to at one point start saying, you know what, I am good enough. Regardless of how this turns out, I'm helping someone because my goal has always been, if my blog post helps one person, if one person reads it and is helped, then it was worth writing. I don't care if 100, I hope 100 people or more are, impacted and find it helpful. But if just one person finds it helpful, if I speak at a conference and just one person finds it helpful, even if only one person shows up, I hope they find it helpful. But,
Yeah.
I just want at least one person to be impacted and to learn something that's useful for them that they can take back to their place of business and implement and make their life easier. So it's been a journey of you know finding my self confidence to say I'm worthy of the title. I've put in the work and I know enough, and not letting that imposter syndrome kind of take over. But also, having a lot of really great mentors, not only in the MVP program, but just in my professional career that have said, "You've got this." It was really great. We went to Dynamics Con a couple weeks ago, and I ran into some other F&O MVPs that some of which I've met before, some I've never met, and the amount of hugs and saying it's about time, and how excited they were for me was just really just amazing because it is a great community of people. I mean, whether you're an MVP or not, it is the most welcoming group of people that I've am excited to see when I go to conferences. I'm excited to see them, or talk to them, or just check in on LinkedIn and say, hey, how's it going? Haven't talked to you in a while. But it's really the community, even non-MVPs, that just really help with the journey of, reaffirming that you have something worth saying and that your content is helping them. And that's what it is
Yeah.
about at the end of the day, just helping others. Because as someone who had to learn via Google, I wish I had
Yeah.
found a blog that would have helped me for 2012 back in the day. But it's just something that I've been there as that end user thrown into it, and I want to help those end users thrown into it. So that's always kind of where I come back to, and I think that's resonated a lot with other people I've talked to that are maybe more technical in their content. I've had people that are technical in their content say, hey, I really liked that really simple functional explanation. It really helped. So, there's
Yes.
definitely different ends of the spectrum where we can help each other. And, I don't think I would have been able to get to have an MVP without an amazing community behind me.
That is so valuable, Brittany, what you have shared. I think the type of emotions which people go through after putting in their MVP application and waiting for that result, I can totally relate to it. And I was one of those who did not got successful in their first attempt, so I have to redo the whole thing again. But I think, as you mentioned, the power of community, people who support you, like you mentioned, Kelly and Mary, they are great technical community leaders. We follow them, we respect them, we admire them. And if you meet them in person, it definitely creates an adrenaline rush to just go and hug them and say, hey,
Yeah.
it's so nice to see you. And I'm sure next year when you will go to the MVP summit at Seattle, you will find all the MVPs and you'll have a gala time there for 3 days. So make sure you mark your calendars and plan a trip there.
Oh, I'm
Cool.
planning on it. It's right around my birthday, so it'll be my nice little birthday present to myself to get out there.
Awesome. we'll if I stay MVP, I'll take a birthday party from you there.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we are coming towards the end. What I want to ask you last few things is how are you using AI? How is it helping you? And what would you recommend to people who are new to Dynamics 365 Finance? How can they start learning and get their career into this space? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Loaded questions there. You saved the hard ones for last.
Yeah.
So AI, I use it a lot to take maybe some examples or explanations of what I'm trying to do in the system and maybe make it a little more user friendly sometimes or rewording things. I use Copilot a ton. Writing emails, writing, saying, hey, how do I do this process? Or how can I make this sound better? Or, give me some ideas for, what are people asking about on LinkedIn for, questions about F&O. Like I'll use that a lot to see if I can get some comments or, that somebody maybe left on a post that they want to learn something more about. Still exploring, Copilot for finance and F&O. There's so much to learn. It's still so new that it just haven't had the opportunity to dive into it as much as I want to, but I am, working on getting there. As far as my advice for anyone learning F&O is just try it. Not in production. That is the biggest caveat there. Don't try it in production. Try it in UAT or test before, if you want to know what something does or how something's going to work, just try it there. Sometimes we don't try things or look at stuff in the system because we're afraid of what might happen. As long as you're in test or UAT, you're fine. So, sometimes just going through tutorials, finding blogs that maybe explain it differently. We all learn differently. So maybe somebody has a video and that doesn't really reach you as much as, if somebody has step-by-step instructions with pictures, that's easier. There's a lot of resources out there. I mean, Microsoft Learn is, the pinnacle of it, right? It walks you through how to do things. And I mean, things are changing so much. I probably spend a lot of time on Microsoft Learn. So I'm like, wait, did this change since the last time I looked at it?
Yeah.
This feature is new. This, one button is new. So, it's just diving in, finding somewhere to learn and picking an area. I mean, you can't be an expert in the entirety of finance and operations. It's nearly impossible. You'll master one module and an update comes out and you've no longer mastered it. So just kind of picking, a few areas to just learn and keep up to date with. And I find that that's the most successful, way to learn F&O.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I also tell people find your area of interest and go deep into it and become an expert. Don't try to master everything, otherwise it's a never ending story. I mean, it's good to know all the frameworks and you will gradually develop understanding of how, even if you're a finance person, you will understand that you'll develop an understanding of how the supply chain works over a period of time. But it's all those T-shaped skills where you have a depth in a particular domain and then other areas on a high level. And Microsoft Learn, as you said, is a great resource. What I also tell people is when you go through those Microsoft Learn modules, there is a way you can launch the virtual machine, and under that you can actually get access to the UI. So if you don't have instance from your company or your client, you can always get it for 2 hours for free through Microsoft Learn. You just launch the session and it gives you the UI. So Microsoft Learn is a great resource for people who want to learn. And also on GitHub, Microsoft has released business process guides, which is a very nice breakdown of all the business processes from record to report, order to cash. So you can go from level 1 to level 3 or 4, I believe. And it's constantly maturing. So a lot of things available for free online for people who are interested to learn. Thanks, Brittany, for joining us today. Any final closing remarks?
No, just thanks for having me, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person, in the near future.
Definitely looking forward to it. All right, then we'll close this episode. So thank you, Brittany, for sharing your experiences and insights with us. And I'm sure your story will inspire many other people and women, and it will help them to pursue their dreams in the field of technology. And stay tuned, hit the like button, leave your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you. See you.
Bye.